Hello, everyone. On behalf of Island and all of our partners everywhere, I want to welcome you to another episode of Island Insights. Today, we're joined by Dante Orsini, Senior VP of Business Development. Dante, so glad to have you with us.
Will, great talking to you today. I'm excited.
Thank you. Can you tell everyone a little bit about your role at Island and what you're currently doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I manage all of our routes to market. So I work very closely with our direct sales force, our marketing team, work very closely with our alliances, with our partners like VMware, Cisco, HPE, Veeam, Zerto, and the list goes on and on and on. I get to wear lots of hats, Will. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. So you and I have known each other for a very long time, long before I started at Island. We've been doing disaster recovery for customers since, dark fiber between sites and Site Recovery Manager 1.0 and all that stuff. Technology has gotten better, it's gotten easier, it's gotten faster, but not everybody has DR. What do you see as kind of one of the biggest challenges or hurdles that customers are still facing even in 2020?
Yeah, great question. I mean, it's not a secret, right? The role of IT is getting much more complex. It's changing every day, right? People are still being asked to do more with less, but now more than ever, the stakes are super high. Every time we talk to leaders in IT, we know that they're trying to change what they're doing on a day-to-day basis to really serve the business, right? To focus on things like innovation, growing the business, and there's less and less time for risk mitigation. But when you add to that the whole platform is changing because people are starting to migrate and have been migrating certain applications out to SaaS providers. They're looking at ways that they can develop next generation architectures that may be running on various different public clouds, right? So it's becoming more complex. And again, the pace is moving so fast, it becomes increasingly more difficult. So we see a lot of people struggling with that because they're really trying to keep the lights on while careening downhill as fast as they can, right? Trying to change the tires on the bus, if you will. So that makes protecting it that much more critical, but also that much more difficult.
Yeah. Now, where do you see some of the biggest stalling factors when you talk to customers?
Yeah, I think a lot of people get caught just in inertia, right? They're trying to figure out, okay, where do I start? And we see two different types of customers. Some that really just don't have a solid DR plan, and they realize now that they're more exposed because of the constant threats against the business, especially from a cyber perspective. But then we also see folks that have been working through DR and resiliency plans for years, but again, with the breakneck pace of change, it's just becoming increasingly more difficult for them to focus their best talents on that component of the business, right? So they're looking for the right partner that can actually take that off their hands and manage the whole process end to end for them. So again, they can focus further up the stack, more on innovation, more on other IT initiatives that are helping drive the business forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, you and I talk all the time about how, getting data from one place to another is pretty easy, right? I mean, replication technologies have improved, virtualization has improved. But once it's there, what are some of the hurdles and struggles that you find customers are challenged with then?
Yeah, great point. I mean, I think first of all, understanding what the process is to recover and making sure that can happen across the entire business is really important, right? Getting the data to one place, like you said, is easy, but making sure that people can access that data, as well as making sure that the applications perform, right? And again, as the platform itself, goes beyond corporate IT's data center, it becomes increasingly more complicated, right? So at the same time, you start to look at not just failing over and getting access and looking at performance, but now you have to worry about day two operations. Mm-hmm. Right? So what's the underlying platform I'm running on? How much control do I have over that? Can I scale that platform? Is it protected from a data protection perspective? What about security? What about compliance? Right? These are all things that go into building a solid resiliency plan. And most importantly, making sure that you have the keys to the kingdom on when you can test these solutions to make sure they work, whether it's just a fraction of the environment or the entire environment, whether you're a business that operates on a regional basis or whether you operate on a global basis, right? And how much of this process can you actually highly automate and orchestrate? That's another key critical component that we focus on, right? To again, relieve more burden on these teams, whether they're testing or whether they're actually failing over.
Now, you bring up testing. That's a good point. So how important is testing? Obviously, we know the answer, but how important is testing in a disaster recovery scenario for either repeatability or even auditing when it comes to some of those regulated, mandated type things?
Yeah, it's a great point. Especially when you talk about the audited side of this, right? We work with a lot of folks that, I think buyers are becoming much more intelligent when they go through the procurement process. So when organizations are selling to somebody, they no longer, query them and say, hey, do you have a DR plan and has it been tested? Check, yes, it has. Great. That's not working. A lot of people are more savvy now. Great, prove it. Show me the last audited result, right? So we see that there's a lot of focus on that. But again, looking at ways that we can highly automate and orchestrate that, right? So we can really reduce the burden, especially when we're working with large global organizations where, oftentimes the application owners may be spread across various different geographies, right? So making sure that you can create run books that cater to that distributed nature of your business. So maybe you don't have to schedule a full-blown DR test. A lot of people will do that, right, on some frequency, but to have a lot of smaller ones that are really focused on a core application or groups of applications, so you can grab the application owners and not try to burden everybody 24/7, right, to pull them all into the same exercise. Being able to build those run books and automatically execute them is an area where we really focus to help, relieve that burden on a lot of folks.
Yeah, and when we talk about run books, a lot of times we bring up the fact that orchestration and automation is important, but like you said, you don't want to bring over everything if ransomware infects just a certain key component, or you just need dependency of applications to move over, not the whole data center. So it's important to be able to segment it out. It's also important to be able to automate all of that stuff together. So beyond technology, what are some of the challenges that business leaders are having when it comes to even starting these projects, making sure that the projects go from start to finish, understanding how they prioritize what applications they need to even worry about?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing to consider is change is the only constant here, right? And we hear that all the time. I often see when there's a change in leadership, they're also quickly trying to figure out, if a new CIO enters an organization, she immediately wants to take stock to understand where, she could be exposed, right? So I see that oftentimes this is being driven from the top because nobody wants to be on the front page, right, of the paper these days, right? And oftentimes, we know that things like natural disaster always get the headlines, but this day and age, the complexity and the cost of recovering from a cyber event is one, much more probable, and two, much more difficult, right? So we see a lot of folks that are trying to figure out, what do we need to do to get started? And this is the time of year where things like disaster recovery, IT resilience, they're top 5 initiatives,
Yeah.
right? And we all know that everybody gets busy, and this is usually one of the first ones to fall off, right? But I will tell you that with the looming threats that we see on the cyber side, this is becoming a critical component to any IT leader's, playbook for the year. Taking stock, understanding where they are, and then working with somebody to pragmatically take the steps to prepare to either put a plan in place or actually bring somebody in that can actually, help you do it step by step and start to execute on it.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I mean, the threats that we're seeing, I mean, I think I read a report that Interpol released something that, cybercrime and cyber, ransomware type stuff is a $3 trillion a year business. And, it's more profitable for the bad guys than, heroin and, those kind of heavy drug trafficking. So the bad guys really are getting interested. So any last comments to talk about real quick?
No, well, I think this was great. Thanks for the opportunity. And again, for all of you that are considering this, please take the time to take it seriously, right? Not just your customer base, but your career could really be predicated on your ability to execute here.
Yeah.
So if anything we can do to help, obviously let us know.
Yeah, because if you can't do it, your competitors will. So. All right, Dante, thank you very much on behalf of Island, all of our partners everywhere. Thanks for joining us for another Island Insight, and take care, Dante. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Will. Bye-bye.